Have you ever noticed how the people who seem the most powerful are not always the loudest, the fastest, or the ones showing off their strength? True power isn't about shouting louder than everyone else or forcing your way into control. It isn't luck, and it certainly isn't magic. Power, real power, comes from strategy, knowing when to move, when to hold back, and when silence itself is more commanding than words. Most people lose their power without even realizing it. Think about it. How often do people sabotage themselves by overreacting, talking too much, or letting their emotions run wild? One heated outburst, one careless slip of the tongue, one moment of weakness, and suddenly, they've handed control over to someone else. They think they're fighting for dominance, but in truth, they're just giving their opponent the upper hand. The Stoics, ancient masters of self-mastery, understood this truth better than anyone. They believed that power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from controlling yourself. Calmness is not weakness, it's strength. Discipline isn't a cage, it's freedom. And self-control, it is the very foundation upon which all lasting power is built. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is tense, arguing, fighting to be heard. And then, in the middle of the storm, one person stands calm, unshaken, unmoved. Who do you think holds the real power? It's not the ones who shout the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need to. The one who keeps composure while others lose it. That is Stoic power. And this is what we're diving into today. Because if you want to rise above chaos, if you want to lead instead of follow, if you want to live with the kind of authority that cannot be stolen from you, then you must understand and practice these principles. This video is not about tricks or cheap tactics. It's about rules, timeless, unshakable rules, that will help you build absolute power from the inside out. Rules that great leaders, philosophers, and even warriors of history lived by. Rules that still matter today, in your workplace, in your relationships, and in your daily life. So, in this journey, we're going to break down 6 Stoic rules for absolute power. Not temporary control, not the fragile power that depends on others recognizing you, but the kind of power that no one can take away, because it comes from within you. Before we get into the first rule, I want you to ask yourself, how much power do you truly have right now over your own life? Do you find yourself easily provoked, constantly explaining yourself, or trying to prove your worth? Or are you able to hold steady, even when the world around you shakes? This reflection matters because power begins not in how others see you, but in how you carry yourself when no one is watching. So get ready, because in the next moments, we're going to unlock the 6 rules that the Stoics would call the art of true strength. These aren't abstract ideas. They are practical tools you can use today to become unshakable, disciplined, and untouchable by the chaos of others. Let's begin. Rule 1. Master emotional stillness. Let's begin with the first and most crucial rule. Master emotional stillness. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone lose control in a heated moment? Maybe it was a boss shouting at an employee, a politician stumbling during a tough question, or even a friend panicking under pressure. In those moments, what do you see? You don't see strength. You see weakness. You see predictability. Because here's the truth. When your emotions run wild, you're no longer steering your own ship. Someone else is. Your anger, your fear, your desperation. They take the wheel, and suddenly, you're reacting instead of leading. That's why emotional stillness is the foundation of power. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people in a negotiation. One stays calm, measured, unshaken. The other grows frustrated, over-explains, stammers, tries too hard to justify themselves. Who do you think walks away with the better deal? It's almost always the one who controls their emotions, because composure itself is influence. The calm person becomes the anchor in the storm, while the other reveals their uncertainty for everyone to see. And here's where the wisdom of the Stoics becomes so powerful. The Stoics taught us that emotions are not facts. They are impressions. Feelings rise like waves, but they don't define reality unless we choose to obey them. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." In other words, your emotions might knock on your door, but you don't have to invite them in for dinner. Now, I'm not saying you should be cold or unfeeling. That's not Stoicism. What I'm saying is, you must learn to pause, to observe your emotions instead of immediately acting on them. Because when you do, you create space between the stimulus and your response. And in that space, you find your true power. Think about how much energy is wasted when people lose their cool. Yelling, defending, explaining, arguing. None of it changes the situation. It only drains you. But when you remain still, when you breathe instead of panic, when you hold silence instead of scrambling for words, suddenly the power shifts. The other person feels unsettled, maybe even intimidated. Why? Because they expected you to react, and you didn't. They expected weakness, and you gave them stillness. That's commanding. That's influence. Let me ask you this. How different would your life look if you stopped reacting instantly to every provocation? If you didn't get pulled into arguments? If you didn't let criticism shake you? If you didn't allow fear to dictate your choices? How much calmer, clearer, and stronger would you feel? The Stoics believe that mastering emotional stillness is like standing in the eye of the storm. Everything around you can be chaos, but inside there is silence. That silence is your strength. And it's not just philosophical poetry. It's a practical tool. Picture this in your workplace. Everyone is stressed about deadlines. People are snapping at each other. The tension is thick. And then there's you, calm, focused, not feeding the chaos, but cutting through it with clarity. Who do you think people will look to for guidance? You. Because while others drown in emotion, you've become the steady rock they can depend on. That is how leaders are recognized, not by noise but by composure. Or imagine an argument in your personal life. Most people think the louder they speak, the more right they are. But what happens when you simply listen? When you respond with calm instead of anger? You disarm the conflict. You hold the higher ground. You keep your dignity while others lose theirs. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Now here's something to reflect on. Every time you react emotionally, you are predictable. People know exactly how to push your buttons because you've shown them before. But when you master stillness, you become unreadable. And when you're unreadable, you're unshakable. No one can control you because they can't predict you. The benefits are immense. Emotional stillness saves you energy. You don't waste it on meaningless battles. It commands respect. People admire those who stay calm when everyone else collapses. And it unsettles your critics, because nothing frustrates them more than realizing they cannot move you. This doesn't mean you won't feel emotions. You will. you're human. The key is not to suppress them, but to manage them. Feel the anger, the fear, the anxiety, but don't let them dictate your next move. Instead, use them as information. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Is it guiding me toward truth, or is it clouding my judgment? When you pause and reflect, you regain control. And that is the essence of power: to remain calm when others lose themselves, to choose reason over impulse, to act with clarity when others are blinded by noise. So as you move forward in your journey, remember this: power is not about controlling the outside world. It's about mastering your inner world. And it begins here, with emotional stillness. Because if you cannot rule your own emotions, you will always be ruled by someone else's. Rule 2. Let silence lead. If rule number 1 is about mastering your emotions, rule number 2 is about mastering your voice, or more specifically, the power of not using it. The rule is simple, yet deeply uncomfortable for most people. Let silence lead. Now think about it. Why do so many people fear silence? Why does even a short pause in conversation make them squirm? It's because silence feels like a spotlight. It makes us feel exposed. And in that discomfort, we rush to fill the void with words. We overtalk, over-explain, and often we reveal far more than we should. But here's the paradox. The one who embraces silence holds the real power. Because silence, when chosen deliberately, signals confidence. It shows that you don't need to prove yourself with noise. And while you wait calmly, others will scramble to fill the gap, often exposing their own insecurities or weaknesses. I'll give you a simple example. Imagine you're in a job interview. The interviewer asks a tough question. You answer clearly and then you stop. Most candidates panic in that space and keep talking, piling on words, trying to impress, but in the process they expose uncertainty. The confident candidate, however, gives their answer, then holds the silence. They sit in calm composure, letting the weight of their words stand on their own. Who do you think leaves the stronger impression? Silence unsettles people because it forces them to reveal themselves. In negotiations, the one who speaks first after an offer is usually the one who loses ground. Why? Because silence creates pressure, and people rush to relieve it by giving more than they intended. In conflicts, the one who argues less often gains more. Instead of wasting energy trying to dominate with noise, they dominate with presence. The Stoics understood this power. Marcus Aurelius himself urged that our words should be few, weighed carefully, and always aligned with principle. He didn't say, never speak. He said, speak with purpose. Words should be tools, not weapons thrown carelessly in every direction. Think of silence as a weapon in itself, but one that doesn't destroy. It disarms, it humbles, it shifts attention and forces others to measure themselves against your stillness. When you refuse to rush into chatter, you show that you're not desperate for approval, not afraid of the pause, not driven by insecurity. And let me tell you, people notice. Consider a real-life scenario, a heated argument with someone close to you. Most people respond by raising their voices, interrupting, or trying to win the debate with more and more words. But what happens if you simply go quiet? Not with coldness, but with composure. You give them space to reveal their true emotions while you remain steady. More often than not, their anger burns itself out. Your silence becomes louder than any words could be. Or think about leadership. A true leader doesn't need to talk endlessly to assert authority. Sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can do in a meeting is sit quietly, listening, weighing, allowing others to speak. And then, when they finally speak, it carries weight, because their silence gave their words gravity. This is the art of influence. Speak less, mean more. Now, I want you to reflect on your own life. How many times have you said something you regretted simply because you couldn't handle the silence? How often have you explained too much, argued too hard, or revealed too many details just because the pause felt unbearable? And how different would the outcome have been if you had simply stayed quiet? Here's a practice straight from Stoic discipline. Next time you're in a conversation, especially one that feels tense, resist the urge to rush in. Answer clearly, then pause. Notice the discomfort. Let it settle. What you'll find is that people often reveal more in their response to silence than they do in direct questioning. They tell you what they really think, what they fear, what they're hiding, just because they can't bear the quiet. And here's the beauty of this practice. The less you speak, the more people listen when you do. If you talk constantly, your words lose value. But if you speak rarely, and only with purpose, people lean in. They know that when you finally choose to break the silence, it's worth hearing. Silence isn't just absence, it's presence. It communicates that you are calm, that you are centered, that you do not need the validation of constant speech. In fact, it communicates that you are in control, both of yourself and of the situation. In interviews, silence shows confidence. In negotiations, silence wins concessions. In conflicts, silence protects your dignity. In leadership, silence amplifies authority. This is why silence, paradoxically, makes you louder. Let's return to the Stoics one last time. Seneca once wrote, "It is better to be despised for silence than to be condemned for speech." Powerful words. They understood that once spoken, words cannot be taken back. But silence never betrays you. So ask yourself, in your next difficult conversation, will you let silence lead? Will you resist the impulse to fill every pause with nervous chatter? Will you choose composure over noise? Because here's the truth. Most people are terrified of silence. And that's exactly why the few who master it always stand out. Remember this: the stillness of your silence can roar louder than the chaos of their words. And that is how you command influence without ever raising your voice. Rule 3. Be strategically misunderstood. This one may sound strange at first. After all, who wants to be misunderstood? Who wants people to underestimate them, to think less of them, or to assume they don't know much? But here's the paradox. Being underestimated is often one of the greatest shields of power you can carry. Think about it. When people think they already understand you, when they've already sized you up, they stop watching you carefully. They relax their guard. And when they relax, you gain an advantage. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to not reveal what you're capable of until the right moment. Let me give you an example. I once knew a man named Alan, who was part of a corporate training program. At first, everyone thought he was passive, even timid. He didn't speak much, didn't push his ideas forward, and didn't try to outshine anyone. Most of the group dismissed him. But here's what Alan was really doing. He was watching. He was studying. He was quietly gathering insights while everyone else was competing to be heard. And then, at the right moment, he spoke. And when he did, his insight was so sharp, so well-timed, that the entire room shifted. The same people who had ignored him suddenly leaned in. He went from invisible to undeniable in a single moment. That is the art of being strategically misunderstood. Most people can't stand being underestimated. Their ego can't handle it. The moment someone underappreciates them, they rush to correct it. They overshare, they brag, they reveal too much too soon. They think they're proving themselves, but in reality, they're surrendering their advantage. The Stoics, however, taught us a better way. They warned us not to feed the ego's hunger. Discipline means holding back when your ego wants to shout. It means resisting the urge to constantly explain yourself or prove your worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should be indifferent to what others think of us, because their judgments don't define us. Our actions do. Now, why is this so powerful in practice? Because when you allow others to underestimate you, you create what I call the element of surprise. You turn their assumption into your shield. They lower their defenses because they believe you're not a threat, and that's exactly when your preparation and patience give you the upper hand. Think about military strategy. The greatest victories are often won through deception, through appearing weaker than you are, hiding your true strength until the decisive strike. Life, in many ways, works the same. If people know your every move, if they know your full strength, you've lost the advantage of surprise. Let me ask you, how many times in your life have you wasted energy trying to correct someone's misunderstanding of you? How often have you felt the need to defend your reputation, to argue back, to prove someone wrong? And in doing so, did you really gain anything? Or did you just burn time and energy that could have been used to quietly build and strike when it mattered? Being strategically misunderstood means playing the long game. It means having the discipline to hold back, to observe, and to act when the timing is right. It means you stop being predictable. In the workplace, this might look like listening more than you speak in meetings, letting others underestimate you, and then delivering results that no one saw coming. In relationships, it might mean not reacting when someone doubts you, but letting your actions prove your strength over time. In negotiations, it might mean letting the other side believe they have the upper hand, only to reveal later that you've held the stronger position all along. This is not about deception in a malicious sense. It's about wisdom. It's about knowing that your power grows when it is unseen, not flaunted. The Stoics would remind us, your ego wants the spotlight, but your discipline wants the victory. Which one will you choose? Here's a simple exercise to practice. The next time someone underestimates you, resist the urge to correct them. Don't rush to prove them wrong. Instead, let it be. Smile, stay calm, and keep building quietly. When the right moment comes, let your actions speak for you. Because actions, especially unexpected ones, have far greater impact than words. In fact, some of the most powerful people in history mastered this rule. Think of leaders who were dismissed early in their careers, only to rise later and shock everyone with their strength. Their secret wasn't constant self-defense. It was patience. It was timing. So here's the challenge. The next time you're tempted to prove yourself immediately, remember this rule. Sometimes the greatest strategy is to allow others to believe they've figured you out, when in truth, they have no idea what's coming. Because when you let others underestimate you, you're not losing power. You're storing it. You're building it. You're waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it. And when that moment comes, your silence, your patience, and your discipline will have turned underestimation into your greatest advantage. Rule 4. Turn absence into strength. We live in a world where everyone is trying to be seen all the time. Social media tells us, post more, talk more, be everywhere, or you'll be forgotten. People hustle to stay visible, to be constantly present, thinking that if they just keep showing up in front of others, they'll gain more respect, more recognition, more power. But here's the paradox. Constant presence reduces impact. If people can always reach you, always hear from you, always see you, your presence becomes ordinary. And ordinary is never powerful. True power lies in scarcity, in choosing your moments carefully, in guarding your presence like something valuable, and in letting absence amplify your influence. Let me share an example. In one of the firms I once studied, there was a senior partner who almost never attended ordinary meetings. He wasn't rude or careless. He was deliberate. He only appeared when his presence was truly needed. And when he entered the room, everyone straightened up. Everyone leaned forward. Why? Because his absence had made his presence rare. His words carried weight because they weren't constant. They were reserved for the moments that truly mattered. This is what it means to turn absence into strength. Think about it in your own life. Do you know someone who always talks, always has an opinion, always needs to be involved? After a while, people stop listening. Their words blur into background noise. Now compare that to the person who speaks rarely, but when they do, everyone stops to listen. Their scarcity gives them authority. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from not needing to be everywhere, not needing to be noticed by everyone. If you are desperate to be seen, you are enslaved by attention. But if you can step back, if you can be comfortable with absence, then your presence becomes a choice, powerful and respected. Absence is not weakness, it is strategy. Consider this. In relationships, constant availability often breeds complacency. When you're always there, people take you for granted. But when you protect your time, when you step back, when you make your presence a privilege instead of a given, that's when appreciation grows. Scarcity creates value. Or look at leadership again. A leader who constantly hovers, constantly interferes, loses authority. But a leader who appears only when their voice is truly needed, who chooses their moments wisely, commands attention. Their absence creates space for others to act, and when they return, their presence reshapes the room. So how do you practice this? First, guard your time and attention. Not everyone deserves constant access to you. Not every conversation, every event, every message needs your immediate reply. By being selective, you signal that your energy is valuable. Second, choose your moments wisely. Don't waste your presence on every stage, every argument, every spotlight. Ask yourself, does this moment truly require me? Or am I just feeding my ego by showing up? Often, the strongest move is to hold back until your presence has maximum impact. Third, embrace the power of stepping away. In conflict, sometimes leaving the space speaks louder than staying and arguing. In work, sometimes letting others struggle before you step in makes your guidance more powerful. In relationships, sometimes giving space deepens respect and desire more than constant presence ever could. This is not about playing games or manipulating others. It's about understanding the natural law of value. What is rare is treasured. What is common is ignored. Let me ask you, in your own life, are you spreading yourself too thin, trying to be everywhere, trying to please everyone? Or are you making your presence rare enough to be respected? Here's something you can try. For 1 week, resist the urge to jump into every conversation, every debate, every invitation. Hold back. Be intentional. Watch how people start to notice when you do choose to appear. Notice how silence in one space makes your voice in another space more powerful. Notice how absence, carefully used, builds presence. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that we should live with purpose, not noise. To him, every action should be deliberate, aligned with principle, not driven by the hunger for attention. And this applies directly here. Let your presence be deliberate. Let your absence be deliberate. Both can shape the perception of your strength. Because here's the truth. Power isn't about being seen all the time. It's about being seen at the right time. So as you move forward, remember rule number 4. Don't scatter your energy everywhere. Don't be constantly available. Don't let your presence become cheap. Instead, let your absence sharpen your value. Let it amplify your presence when you return. Because when people realize they cannot have you all the time, they begin to treasure the moments when they do. And that, my friends, is real power. Rule 5. Lead quietly through reflection. We've talked about emotional stillness, the power of silence, the strategy of being misunderstood, and even the strength of absence. Now we arrive at rule number 5. Lead quietly through reflection. And this rule is different from what most people think leadership looks like. Because when many hear the word leader, they imagine someone standing tall, commanding the room, speaking the loudest, and dominating every decision. But that's not leadership, that's theater. True influence doesn't come from domination. It comes from reflection, from listening deeply, mirroring others with understanding, and then gently guiding the direction forward. Let me give you a real-life picture. In a community where I once worked, there was a heated dispute over resources. Voices were raised, neighbors were angry, and it felt like nothing could bring the sides together. Then one man, a quiet elder, stepped forward. He didn't yell, he didn't argue, he listened. He let each side speak, nodding, reflecting their words back to them. And something incredible happened. As people felt heard, the anger began to calm. Slowly, the group shifted from shouting at each other to searching for common ground. That quiet elder didn't dominate the room, he guided it. And in the end, his leadership helped forge an agreement that no one thought possible. That's the essence of this rule. People are not moved by being crushed under logic or overwhelmed by force. They are moved when they feel understood. Now, think about your own experiences. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone truly listened? Not just waiting to reply, but actually hearing you. How did it feel? Chances are, you felt respected. You felt seen. And because you felt understood, you were far more open to what they had to say in return. This is exactly how quiet leadership works. You don't need to shout to influence others. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You lead by reflecting, by showing others that you grasp their perspective, even if you don't agree with it, and then gently guiding the direction toward clarity. The Stoics knew this well. They taught that humility is a pillar of strength. To lead others, you must first study them, observe their fears, their desires, their struggles. Epictetus often reminded his students that you cannot teach someone who feels attacked. But if you approach with humility, you can build trust. And trust, once built, is the strongest foundation for influence. Consider this in your workplace. Imagine you're managing a team, and tension is rising. One leader might slam the table, raise their voice, and try to impose their will. Another leader might sit back, listen carefully, reflect each person's concerns, and then calmly guide the group toward a solution. Which leader do you think builds long-term loyalty? Which one inspires people to follow, not out of fear, but out of respect? The answer is obvious. People follow those who understand them, not those who dominate them. Now let's make this practical. How can you practice quiet leadership through reflection in your own life? First, listen more than you speak. Not the kind of listening where you're already crafting your reply in your head, but genuine listening. Tune in fully. Let the other person finish. And when they do, reflect back what you heard. So what you're saying is, or it sounds like you feel, this simple act can disarm tension and make people feel valued. Second, mirror emotions, not just words. If someone is frustrated, acknowledge the frustration. If someone is hopeful, affirm the hope. When people see their inner world mirrored back to them, they feel connected to you. Third, guide gently, not forcefully. Once people feel understood, they're far more willing to be guided. At that point, you don't need to argue. You can suggest, inspire, and nudge in the right direction. And often, they'll feel like the solution is theirs, which makes them embrace it even more strongly. This approach doesn't just work in conflict, it works everywhere. In family life, when children feel heard, they listen better. In friendships, when friends feel understood, trust deepens. Even in negotiations, showing that you grasp the other side's needs can unlock opportunities that brute force never could. The beauty of quiet leadership is that it doesn't exhaust you. Domination requires constant energy, shouting, proving, arguing. Reflection requires stillness and humility. It saves energy, builds trust, and strengthens relationships over time. Let me ask you this. When people think of you, do they think of someone who truly listens? Someone who understands? Or do they think of someone who always has to be right, who always has to dominate? Because the answer to that question will determine the kind of influence you carry. The Stoics remind us, a leader who cannot listen cannot truly lead. Leadership is not about the noise you make. It's about the clarity you create. So as you move forward, practice the art of reflective leadership. Step back from the urge to dominate. Instead, listen with depth, mirror with empathy, and guide with quiet strength. Because when people feel understood, they will not only follow you, they will trust you. And trust, once earned, is influence that cannot be broken. Rule 6. Walk away with clarity. And now we arrive at the final rule, the one that ties everything together. Rule number 6. Walk away with clarity. Let me tell you something many people don't want to hear. True power isn't just about knowing when to speak, when to hold back, or even when to strike. True power is also knowing when to leave. Most people don't walk away. They stay. They cling. They remain in toxic jobs, unhealthy relationships, or dead-end partnerships because of fear. Fear of loneliness. Fear of failure. Fear of starting over. But here's the paradox. By refusing to walk away, they don't preserve their security. They surrender their freedom. Walking away is not weakness. Walking away with clarity is one of the strongest moves you can ever make. Let me share a story. A man named Daniel once partnered in a business venture. Over time, the partnership grew toxic, filled with manipulation, mistrust, and conflict. Many people in his position would have stayed, trying to fix it, trying to hold on, terrified of what would happen if they left. But Daniel chose differently. He walked away, calmly, clearly, without anger. He didn't slam the door or make a scene. He simply released what no longer aligned with his values. And do you know what happened? The business collapsed without him. His quiet exit revealed that the strength had always been in him, not in the partnership. That's the kind of clarity we're talking about. The Stoics taught us that clinging to what harms us is the root of misery. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When you hold on to something that is draining your peace, You're not exercising strength. You're enslaving yourself. Think about your own life. How many times have you stayed too long in a situation that no longer served you? A job where you were undervalued. A relationship where you weren't respected. A friendship that had long since become one-sided. Why did you stay? Probably for the same reasons most people do. Fear of change, fear of being alone, fear of the unknown. But here's the truth. Clarity is stronger than fear. When you know who you are, when you know your values, when you know what matters most, you no longer beg for scraps of respect or cling to things that drain you. You walk away, not in bitterness, but in peace. This doesn't mean walking away recklessly. Stoicism teaches us not to abandon responsibilities thoughtlessly or run from every discomfort. No. It means that when something no longer aligns with your principles, when it costs you your inner freedom, when it keeps you from peace, you release it. Not with rage, but with clarity. And here's the powerful part. When you walk away with clarity, you don't lose. You gain. You gain back your time. You gain back your dignity. You gain back your freedom to build something stronger, healthier, and more aligned with your true self. Consider this. In a negotiation, sometimes the strongest move isn't to push harder. It's to calmly stand up and walk away. In relationships, sometimes the greatest act of love for yourself is to leave what no longer honors you. In careers, sometimes the path to growth requires leaving behind the security of what is familiar and stepping into the unknown. Walking away is not about defeat. It's about direction. The Stoics remind us that clarity is the compass. When you walk away with clarity, you're not running from something. You're walking towards something greater. Your peace, your values, your freedom. So let me ask you, what in your life right now is costing you more than it's giving you? What have you been holding on to out of fear, even though deep down you know it no longer belongs in your future? And what would your life look like if you found the clarity and the courage to finally release it? Here's something to practice. The next time you feel stuck, write down what you're afraid of losing if you walk away. Then ask yourself honestly, am I holding on out of strength or out of fear? That answer will reveal more than you think. Because here's the secret. Most of the things we're afraid to let go of are already weighing us down. And the moment we release them, we realize we've been free all along. We just didn't know it. So remember this. Walking away doesn't mean giving up. It means refusing to let fear dictate your future. It means choosing clarity over chaos, freedom over chains, peace over noise. We've walked through 6 timeless rules. Let's bring them together. First, we learned the power of emotional stillness, the ability to hold steady when the storm rages around you. Because the moment you lose control of yourself, you hand your power to someone else. Then came the art of silence, choosing not to fill every gap with noise, but allowing silence to carry its own weight. Silence unsettles. Silence reveals. Silence commands. We then explored the strategy of being misunderstood, letting others underestimate you, holding back instead of oversharing, and using patience to strike when the timing is right. Ego wants to prove itself instantly, but discipline waits, watches, and acts with precision. After that, we uncovered the strength of absence, understanding that presence loses value when it's constant, but gains power when it's rare. Scarcity makes your words, your time, and your influence worth more. We also saw the quiet strength of reflection, leading not by domination, but by listening, mirroring, and guiding with humility. Because people don't follow the loudest voice. They follow the one who truly understands them. And finally, we came to the ultimate act of power, walking away with clarity, releasing what no longer aligns with your values, preserving your peace, and choosing freedom over fear. Knowing when to leave is not weakness. It is sovereignty. 6 rules. Each one simple, each one profound. Together, they form a framework for absolute power. Not the shallow kind of power that comes from controlling others, but the unshakable kind that comes from mastering yourself. Because here is the truth. Power isn't found in noise. It isn't found in endless words, in outbursts of emotion, or in constant presence. Power is found in self-mastery, in discipline, in presence. In knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, when to wait, and when to walk away. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom, that you cannot control the world, but you can control yourself. And in mastering yourself so completely, you outsmart everyone around you. Not because you play games, but because no one can shake the foundation within you. So let me ask you, which of these 6 rules do you need most right now? Do you need stillness in your emotions? Do you need to practice the power of silence? Do you need the humility of being underestimated, the strength of absence, the wisdom of reflective leadership, or the clarity to finally walk away? Reflect on that. Because the rule you resist the most might be the one you need the most. Remember this. Power isn't about domination. It's about liberation. It's not about bending others. It's about standing unshaken yourself. And when you live by these 6 rules, you stop being tossed around by the chaos of others. You become the anchor, the steady force, the one who cannot be moved. That is what it truly means to outsmart the world. Not by controlling others, but by commanding yourself so deeply that no one else can control you. That is the essence of Stoic power. So now, the question is yours. Which of these 6 rules will you start practicing today? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments which rule spoke to you the most and why. Your reflection might just inspire someone else on their own Stoic journey. If this video gave you value, take a moment to hit that like button. It lets me know these messages matter to you, and it helps this wisdom reach others who need it. And if you want more lessons like this, practical Stoic strategies for living with strength, clarity, and inner peace, make sure you subscribe. Join this community, because together, we're building not just knowledge, but a way of life that can't be shaken by the chaos around us. Remember, the Stoics didn't just talk about philosophy, they lived it. The same can be true for you. So let's walk this path together.